Hi there, welcome to the Noah Presgrove case. Today we're doing a bit of a recap from the police's point of view, such as with the undersheriff known as Jimmy Williams that arrived on scene around 6:18 a.m. and see how it contrasts to what Caden Pressey saw at an earlier time of 5:15. And the reason why we're doing this now is with bits and bobs of what we've learned since, and it enables me to maybe go over some points which are very important, which have been neglected since. And on top of that all, there was, I think, some kind of viewer request, or I did a community poll or a poll in one of my videos previously, and people wanted to see certain recaps. And I've made notes and I've re-remembered it recently with what we looked at last night or the night before when it came to mentioning Jimmy Williams' name in regard to Cash Alsop. I had a conversation with him in regard to, I think, some point 2025 onwards, when Cash was done for in a woman's rest room. I think it was the city town as well, in the city building, placing a camera in ventilation or aircon, covering it, concealing, and then Cash kind of like speaking up to Jimmy Williams. And just that name, whilst that charge, that case is a separate thing, the names link on back to the Noah Presgrove case. That's why, links can be made, and why I'm doing this video right here, right now. So welcome to anyone that's watching the live premiere. Share your thoughts and opinions. React in the live chat box, which you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen there. And at any point, and for those watching on catch-up, be sure to drop a comment down below under the video to spread that awareness so more people can see it and I can respond back to. And if there is time today, I will be acknowledging the comments from either yesterday or the day before, whichever what I need to catch up with, and just see what people have had to say in recent time. But the primary focus of today is looking back at the people.com article, which showed Jimmy Williams and his account of things when arriving at the highway, the condition, the situation with Noah Presgrove, how he appeared, how it looked, etc. And see how it compares to what others say, and even Jack Newton, because Jack Newton did speak out as well in that Partisan True Crime interview, the last one that was ever done. So see how that goes. And any more ideas, any more focus recaps, you can let me know. I'm considering doing a recap on Caden Pressey and Jack Newton's Snapchat conversation in the next video. But let's just focus on one thing at a time. If you are interested in coverage like this and previous videos on the case, if you've missed out on any, such as last night's, which was really important, showing indirect charges, people being arrested, but people who link back to the case, you want to catch up on all of that, the information, the details. Top right corner of the screen where the I symbol is, click up there and you'll find the full playlist. If you want to support my channel, down below in the comment section, there'll be a pinned message, PayPal link. With that being said, let's begin. The title of the article reads, "Authorities reveal suspicions from strange scene where Noah Presgrove's body was found." Take in mind, this was done in the past. We've not really seen any official articles coverage since, whether there be any updates or changes. But the title is quite interesting. Suspicions from strange scene. Would it really be considered suspicious? Would it really be considered a strange scene if it's been ruled out as a hit and run and it's just simply an accident? What makes it so strange then? If members of the general public can look at the autopsy report and say it's not that difficult, this and that could have happened, it's not murder, but then does it really make it suspicious if it's not murder? Does it make it strange? Strange can mean it's a mystery, it's unknown. But people in the community seem to have a level of confidence as in what the likely outcome could have been. So it'll be interesting to see how people react to the title, the then title. I believe this article did come out at a later point after the autopsy being revealed. And then in quotes, "This whole situation didn't sit well with me," Sheriff Jeremiah Wilson says. Why would it not sit well with him? Because something dark is going on? It's interesting when you look at the words deeper now. Like the police themselves felt that there was a level of darkness, that something wasn't right. And if something isn't right, then I know it's like foul play. Depends how you look at it. It was at the time how it was done and conducted, I believe, maybe an interview. Jeremiah Wilson has been the sheriff in Jefferson County, Oklahoma since 2017 and worked in law enforcement since 2005 and served in the military before that. And he says he's never seen anything quite like the death of 19-year-old Noah Presgrove. Just based off that and a lot of experience he has under his belt and what he would have seen over time and quite possibly in military too. And when you get the death of someone along a highway, but they say, never been seen anything quite like this before, that says a lot, does it not? Is it more so the factor of the location of where the 19-year-old was found at, or the state of his body and the extent of his injuries? What makes Jeremiah Wilson think the way he does? Wilson was one of the first authorities on scene early on September 4th after two 911 callers reported seeing Noah's body was driving down Highway 81 just outside of Terrell, Oklahoma. So we've got Jeremy Wilson, also known as Jeremiah Wilson, but we've also got Jimmy Williams. To say Jeremiah Wilson was one of the first authorities, there was another before, because Jimmy Williams arrived before Jeremiah Wilson. To make that clear. And in regard to the two 911 callers being Tyler H. and Tyler Hardy, we've already heard the dispatch calls there. And they were going south as they were passing by. In quotes, it looked awful odd, the first caller, who identified only as Tyler, last name initial beginning with a H. They told the dispatcher, according to audio the call that was released to people. Under Sheriff Jimmy Williams was soon sent out. Sheriff Jeremiah Wilson joined him not long after. That's correct, along with members of Terrell's volunteer firefighter department who helped secure the scene. I'm guessing a part of the chief volunteer firefighter, Cash Alsop, arrived as well at around 6 to 6:10 in the morning. Nearly a year later, onward since, it remains unclear how Noah died. His autopsy report obtained by People in May states that he was killed by multiple blunt force injuries, including serious head and neck wounds like vertebral fractures, but the cause of those injuries is undetermined. A state police probe is ongoing. Authorities said in May that they weren't looking into the death as a murder. Yet this article, what we do need to acknowledge, is being treated as suspicious, or the atmosphere at least, but the scene is strange. Of course, it doesn't have to be a murder for it to qualify as strange or mysterious. A person could simply go somewhere, go missing, end up dead, and there might be a bit of a mystery as to how the person has passed away. But of course, in this case, the injuries do stand out, and that's what needs to be focused on. We've got a photo of Noah Presgrove. Some key details have been publicly confirmed, including that before he died, Noah was partying with friends over the Labor Day weekend not far from where his body was found on Highway 81. That was at the party house. But granted, whilst Noah may have been partying with friends, he was supposedly partying with strangers as well, like Texas boys. And me personally, I don't know how well Noah Presgrove knew Justin Roy's nephews, like Ace Franco. Who knows? If that can be cleared up in the comment section, feel free to do so. But the lack of answers, more than 10 months later, rolling on, has roiled the rural community where Noah lived and fueled speculation online. Vigils and protests have been held. A banner hung outside a business in neighbouring Duncan, Oklahoma, urges passerbys to speak out, in quotes. You know what happened to me, so why don't you help? It declares alongside a photo of Noah in his high school football uniform. And whilst attempts like that was done, ads as well on Facebook, Jan Fiorillo's efforts too, after all that being done, has it yielded any responses or anyone reaching out? Not at this moment in time. So what does that say? That you can put a price on getting someone to talk or not, or that no one can simply speak out because no one truly knows what's happened. Noah's family has taken it upon themselves to also dig for clues in a mystery that both law enforcement and outside experts agree appears confounding. And in regard to Noah's family, ever since, where are they really at? As for communication with other party goers like Kate and Pressy Alicia, communication has broken down extensively and not looking too hopeful there, as we've seen. And in terms of Noah's family with police, no real updates either. Sounds pretty dry. Did Noah die accidentally or in a crime? What type of crime though? A crime of murder? A crime of something else going on at the party or nearby and Noah Presgrove got caught up within it or saw something he wasn't supposed to see and was silenced? What happened to his clothes? What brought him to the side of the road before dawn that day? Well, in our own analysis with time, we suggested how and why, such as if Noah was walking away from the party to cool off, to lay in the back the bed of a pickup truck to sleep, to rest, then passing out. And if anyone left after that, Texas boys, for example, unaware Noah was in the back and they drove off down the highway heading north back to Texas. At some point, Noah Presgrove, a mile down, could have woken up, standing up wondering what's going on, lost his balance, fell out. His shorts, if they were to be white at the time, catching on the vehicle, falling off as he falls out, and eventually the gust blows the shorts up, which eventually land in the middle of the roadway. Maybe. But what about Noah's clothes? In terms of what he was wearing at the party, at whatever point. A shirt of some sort. In terms of his shorts, well, they don't appear to be too much of a mystery in regard to where they've ended up. Black or white, they were found, either handed to police or handed over to family. In terms of Noah's wallet, though, that does remain a mystery. Never really been found or acknowledged. In terms of Noah's top, in terms of Noah's hat and some other miscellaneous things, supposedly they were returned back to the family, but then other family members of Noah Presgrove say they've never heard of that and still believe the items are missing. So there could well be a possible breakdown in communication amongst family members of Noah Presgrove, which would be rather disappointing, to be honest. Move further down. In quotes, what I saw from the very beginning, I personally did not believe this was a hit and run, Wilson, Jefferson County Sheriff, said in an interview, whilst also making clear that he was speaking only in his capacity as a first responder in September because the state immediately assumed jurisdiction given that the death was reported on the highway, OHP, Oklahoma Highway Patrol. What Wilson saw that morning was this. He says Noah Presgrove was naked and on his back with a couple of teeth laying next to his body. According to his autopsy, he only wore a pair of mismatched shoes and a pair of white printed shorts were nearby that showed no observable damage. But they might have been dirty in colour, possibly, or had some markings on it, you never know. So the differences here with what's mentioned compared to Caden Pressy at an earlier point, Caden says Noah was wearing black shorts and was clothed. What Wilson says is that Noah was naked at 6 a.m. onwards, and that shorts were nearby, but they were white, not black. And as well, the mention of Noah being on his back, I believe Caden Pressy said Noah was more so on his side, slightly twisted, So does that mean somebody tried rolling over Noah's body? And if so, wouldn't there be some kind of touch-based DNA to show or prove that? Does make you wonder, doesn't it? And in terms of the mismatched shoes, one of which being of Noah's, black Adidas, the other one being Caden's, a Hey Dude shoe. Now at some point, Caden Pressey and or Alicia Lee, speaking on behalf of Caden, in some text conversations from Facebook, had mentioned Caden Pressey said that Noah was wearing Hey Dude shoes, not mismatched shoes. Why would someone go against what's mentioned in the autopsy and what's mentioned by police officials on scene? Rather odd, isn't it? But it was Jack Newton in Parts in True Crime that said Noah Presgrove had a Hey Dude shoe on, and the other shoe, possibly Noah's own, was off his foot and nearby or nowhere to be seen. One of which that Noah only had one shoe on at the time. Makes no sense. Weird. In quotes, there was blood on the scene, but not as much as there should have been. Granted, the way it's worded like this, you can understand in the moment why people would say there must be foul play if there's not enough blood. If officials say that there should have been anticipated that there should have been more, and yet there wasn't. In terms of how it's worded here, I can understand why people would be cautious, sceptical. Let me put it that way, Wilson says. Even if you were hit by a passenger car by highway speeds that night, there should have been a lot more blood. Well, my question would be, if you weren't hit by a moving vehicle, but you may have hit the ground from a moving vehicle, would there be that anticipation of more blood? I wonder. It's interesting how it's worded when you look back. What's more, he says, there was not a lot of road rash, like he slid. He got hit at 65 miles an hour. That was not the case. The autopsy did not state that Noah's body suffered some road rash-like damage. Yeah, it does state, but it's been worded as there wasn't enough of it. Now, depending what speed and what distance Noah travelled at along the ground, what's going on here? It's just because, in fairness, you got members of the police, you've got the sheriff, almost insinuating that it's a little odd that if it was a certain outcome that there should have been more blood, or there should have been more rash on the body. So if Noah had fallen out of a vehicle or was dragged, there would have been more scrape marks. So why do we have members of the general public that believe it's quite normal, and yet you've got officials, people in high authority that believe it's not quite adding up? Who should really be in a position to know? That's just a question I'm wondering. At least how this article's written, it kind of supports more so the army page perspective of the possible cause of death from the language and wording. Also odd, according to Wilson, there was no vehicular parts. Dr. Priya Banerjee, a board-certified forensic pathologist, an outside expert unconnected to the case, also said the lack of car debris was unusual in the case of a hit and run. As it's been made clear, it was ruled out as a hit and run, hence why there probably wouldn't be any car debris. But should there be debris or more road rash on Noah if he was to be bouncing or dragging along? In quotes, I can't look at the injuries and say I know exactly how these occurred, and that's why it's undetermined, she says. Was it a car accident like a hit and run? Was it intentional strike with a vehicle? Did someone beat him up and dump him? There's so many possibilities, and nothing about the injury pattern will help narrow it down further. What we do need to acknowledge is when it comes to these people and experts and police, to my knowledge, they have not done any updates, follow-up interviews since where they weigh in on what they think's the case. So we are dealing with old news here and possible old opinions. Things may have changed and shifted since. But the blood at the scene, she notes that Noah's neck and skull injuries would mean a rapid death and thus yield little bleeding. Okay, fair enough. And if we've got an actual expert here, which is a forensic pathologist, they're going to know more than someone like Jeremiah Wilson or Jimmy Williams. That would be understandable. The type of death, the outcome, the angling, the skull and neck impact there, immediate. Little bleeding, I get that. But what about the road rash part? Is it just down to how one makes contact with the ground, quite violent, impactful, on death, but not enough to cause lots of rolling or distance along the ground? Got to take in mind that Noah was shirtless at the time, so more contact exposed to the hard, rough ground. We call it asphalt. Below, it reads on, in quotes, "If you hit a deer, which deer get hit out here all the time? Always deer and cows. I don't care if you got hit by a semi. There is a piece of a fender. There's a piece of the underfender. There's a headlight. There's a mirror. There's always something," Wilson says. Despite searching through half a mile of the ditches, investigators found nothing, he says. Authorities did recover some, but not all, of a silver chain that Noah often wore. Wilson calls that another oddity. I can understand that. I do believe in the past we did question about it. That silver chain, was the whole piece there or not, and how it's worded here, they recovered some of it. So where is the rest? Why did it break? Was it during the death of Noah? Possibly hitting the ground? But surely the chain would be somewhere along the road, and if it's been searched thoroughly, it should be there, or was at the time. Does that mean to say that the chain broke elsewhere down the highway or at the property? And if so, why exactly? The other possible thing, and it's not a guarantee, depending how Noah may have fallen out of the vehicle, could his chain have caught on the vehicle when falling out, such as with the shorts, and it catched, it tugged, it broke, snapped? Some of it fell off, others remained in the bed, the back of the pickup. I wonder. Anyway, besides that, in quotes, "This whole situation didn't sit well with me," he says, nothing, noting the unusual inability of the scene itself to provide more insight. We've had people hit before, and we can recreate the scene and make it make sense, make it fill the gaps, the sheriff says. We've had unattended deaths, suicides, but the evidence always gives us the facts. We can always backtrack and recreate 99% of the scene, but not here. Sarah Stewart, a spokesperson for Oklahoma's Department of Public Safety, has said that the probe continues into Noah's death and, citing standard procedure, declined to release documents or information on the case until the conclusion of investigation. Noah's family, for their part, says they've been told different things by different law enforcement and say that Jeremiah Wilson previously viewed the incident as a hit and run despite the irregularities. Interesting. The sheriff did not respond to a follow-up question. Why is that then? This might be where we get onto the other main part. Under Sheriff Williams, Jimmy Williams, in a separate interview, says he only alerted the fire department for their initial assistance on September 4th, rather than put out a broader alert that would have summoned more law enforcement and potentially created chaos. "I didn't want a madhouse down there," he says. In addition to the firefighters on scene, as well as members of the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, some locals were also present for a time. According to Wilson, Noah's best friend, Jack Newton, was among them, as was Jack's dad, Caleb. And as we've seen or heard, Jack Newton arrived roughly around 6 a.m. at the highway. 6:05, making a call to his father, Caleb, about the news, and then Caleb eventually coming on down to the scene. Jack tells People, the article, that he basically stumbled upon the scene that morning as he was heading out to go fishing with his father and grandfather at the Warwick Lake. He stopped when he saw a semi-truck on the road by Noah. I saw lights, so I started slowing down. I could see Noah's body in the headlights out of the truck. Now, how distinctive would it have been to be able to instantly identify that that's Noah Presgrove on the side of the road, the highway, the hard shoulder? Tyler Hardy was one of the 2 911 callers that morning and remained on the scene after reporting Noah's body. Tyler says the truck driver, the other caller, returned and waited as well, also known as Tyler H. When Jack Newton pulled up, he walked to the body of Noah, and I walked over and asked him if he knew who he was. Hardy says, and I pulled him away from the body because he's talking about being his best friend. Like the sheriff, Hardy says there really wasn't blood there. He described seeing Noah's body in a slightly different posture than Wilson did, a discrepancy that appeared in other interviews as well. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So Wilson was kind of implying that when Wilson showed up slightly later after Jimmy, that Noah was supposedly on his back. But earlier, slightly, the undersheriff Jimmy Williams describes it was, I'm not going to say the fetal position because it wasn't, but his legs were bent and his back was toward the road. Hardy says, this is to do with Hardy, not Jimmy Williams. Hopefully it's mentioned in this article, but Jimmy Williams said that Noah was on his side, legs straightened. Caden, though, he was there earlier, supposedly from his timeline of 5:15, 5:20, 5:30, is that Noah was on his side but twisted, and his legs and arms were sprawled out. See, even if it's as simple as both being on the sides from what Caden saw early compared to what Jimmy Williams or Tyler saw later, but there's one small difference that one, arms, legs spread out. Second, later, arms, legs tucked in more or kept straight. There's obviously there's been movement, and who would be touching Noah's body and why exactly? If it's away from the road, you shouldn't be touching it whatsoever, unless you've got clones to do so and you're wearing gloves so you don't, touch base DNA, you don't go over it. We heard in the past mention of fetal position. There was a strong obsession about it in the community. But here it says it wasn't, but his legs were bent and his back was toward the road. Is that so, really? Hardy says Noah's legs were towards the ditch and his head was kind of just laid there right along. His whole body was laid along the white line, but he was laying on what would have been his right side. Around 7 in the morning, Noah's big brother Dalen Presgrove, a teacher, got the call that he'd been found dead. Dalen and their dad Victor headed out along Highway 81 to get to the scene. We didn't know exactly where he was, so as we were going, we would go up this hill not knowing if we were about to see Noah on the side of the road. Dalen told people in a previous interview the drive felt like a year. The months since have been difficult too. This is not some lifetime movie for us, says Noah's cousin Ashley Chadwick. This is an everyday reoccurrence. I feel like we probably have not properly grieved because it's been such an ongoing cycle of trying to figure it out. But Noah's loved ones have rallied around his memory, describing him as a fun, fearless athlete, easygoing young man who planned on joining the military, says Chadwick. With that aside, granted more focus was on Jeremiah Wilson rather than Jimmy Williams. I will need to make an observation a bit later. I thought we'd just transition on to the comments section now of a previous video that I've done to catch up with what people have had to say about the case. Lisa, yes, repeated blows. That's why I was asking if Noah was left-handed. Repeated blows. What, Noah's left hand defending himself from being attacked from a certain angle? Or Noah holding an object in his left hand? But why, if he's the one getting attacked? I forgot to say because it's just instinctual. To defend yourself with your dominant arm when being confronted, right? I guess so. Maybe. But how much damage was observed to the hands of Noah, because there's not been any shredded tips or anything like that? We got Glenn, shout out to Glenn. If he was left-handed, those most likely are defensive wounds. That would explain all those lacerations along his left arm. Was there lots of lacerations on his left arm? I thought it was more so like road rash. I said, it's hard to keep up and remember every little detail of the autopsy. He was knocked down to the ground, landed on his right side, unable to run. His left arm was extended out, trying to defend himself. Eventually, he was knocked unconscious, but those two guys continued to beat him. That's why you have the most of the major injuries on his left side, I guess. I should say this is my opinion. Fair enough. If that's your opinion, that's okay. You say two guys. Which two guys? What, supposedly Travis Monson and Colton, supposedly, if we're referring back to what Alicia has said. Justin Roy says, definitely a possibility, yet a certain group won't even consider this. How weird. The thing is, Justin, you say a certain group of people won't even consider it, but there are some people from the dark side, like Tim Daniel, that actually may have considered it previously, or in other areas considered what Caden Pressey was saying as the truth. And there might be others as well. And they just transitioned with time and so had perspectives because of the way the case was going and the cracks were forming. Can't just group everyone all together though. Spencer says, question for Justin Roy. Whilst I was scrolling YouTube today, Karanot short story pop up, good cop, bad cop. I remember parts in True Crime interview 11. Robin Smith, Noah's aunt, saying Noah wouldn't just get into any vehicle with strangers. He didn't know. What about LE vehicle? Was Noah well known by LE in a good way? Just a thought. Good cop, bad cop theory. Justin, wow, never thought of that. Great point. And I'm not sure. One of his ex-girlfriend dad was a deputy for Jefferson County, so I'm sure he would have gotten a ride with him if he was out there. Never thought of this one before. Well, if he had a chance to be able to get a ride back somewhere, are we saying that his ex-girlfriend's dad, a deputy, killed Noah then? Is that what's coming about this? If Noah did receive a ride home by police, but for Noah to end up on the side of the highway, that would imply that likely a police person murdered Noah, based off how it's worded here, which seems a bit odd. Lisa, wow, I love where you're going with this. I want to hear more. Sherry, I'm curious why every person from that party allegedly hasn't been questioned. Michelle, it's a great question and it's very disturbing to think it's not being done too. Michelle, thank you, Raf. Continued coverage is vital to getting justice for Noah. You do an excellent job. Appreciate that. We got Joyce, thanks, you're welcome. Sunny, thank you, Raf, for not giving up on Noah. You're welcome. And, of course, we finish it off with Justin Roy. With timestamp, he says, have you ever wondered why they have pictures of every dove hunt every other year except for September 2023? Nobody finds this odd? Well, to be honest, Justin Roy, I could say the same thing about the Kenny Veach case. Kenny Veach went missing November 10th, 2014. And you look back on Google Earth or Google Maps, going back in time, Google Earth Pro going back in time, and it keeps jumping and skipping either the year of 2014 or the month of 2014. And there doesn't seem to be any recorded images on the key days or times or around that month of when Kenny went missing, which is very typical. And even when it came to looking at the Reiki Healing Store 2018, Las Vegas, run by Kenny's sister, Debbie, and brother, Raymond. No footage relevant at the time to show any signs of a break-in or anything like that from the point of view of online, whilst it was still noted and did happen. When you want to look at it for yourself on satellite imagery, just no opportunities to do so. So for each location, which was a place of interest at a certain point, a time, a year, a month, a date, it would not be available on Google. Out of all the technology that they've got and all the other years which have been covered, that particular day or that particular month was not documented. That could be considered weird too, but it is what it is. The same could possibly apply here with photos taken and when they're not. Now, my question is, Justin, from at least your point of view, you find it odd. Why do you think it's odd? if you had to give your theory an idea, why do you think that there are no photos taken of September 2023? Because it's quite broad that the whole month of September, when really it only matters on 2 days of that month around the party time, that Friday and Saturday, correct? So I would argue and say, depending how many dove hunts take place in September, how many did occur in September. And you're saying that no photos within that month. If there was lots, what I would say, Justin, if on the basis that there was multiple dove hunts the month of September 2023, and let's say there was like 10 of them in the month, 9 out of the 10 were documented and had photos, but that 1 out of 10 dove hunt, which took place at the time of the party and overlapped, had no photos whatsoever, then I would say, Justin, that is odd. If multiple ones were recorded in that month and one was not, it's like, has that been blacklisted? Is that being hidden? No one wants any focus or attention on that one in particular. Makes you think. But if there was multiple dove hunts over September 2023 and none of them were recorded, it doesn't sound as selective, meaning it doesn't sound as odd. That's how I would break it down. Justin says, never said Noah was shot. Justin Roy, do you not understand that when I'm talking, I'm not always responding to what you've said? I'm not always labelling that you've mentioned something. That I've read your comments out, I've interpreted it, and then I'm talking from my point of view about other stuff. It's not all about you, Justin. I never said that you said Noah was shot. So once again, you're jumping in, Justin, in a very unnecessary way. Justin does say, but several weapons could have been used here, but of a gun. I know, I acknowledged that in my video, Justin, if you actually listened. There's still missing golf clubs, a bat, literally anything. As I've said, Justin, if you actually listened, whilst I've acknowledged accidental outcomes in recent time, I've still highlighted that the missing golf clubs and bag is very odd. When it should be returned back, it doesn't need to be a memento. It doesn't need to be spread out to anyone because it belongs to Dalen, and Dalen is deserving of having his property returned back to him. And from the looks of it, that hasn't happened. But has Noah Presgrove given an update since? Not from the looks of it. But still, it's deemed as missing. So just remember that, Justin. Then Justin says, yet what weapons were at the party, WarLike Wrath? Well, once again, any item could be used as a weapon, even a pencil. We know there was rifles, shotguns, AR. Oh, don't forget the missing golf clubs. It's not that hard in terms of acknowledging the golf clubs because we've gone over it many times. But this is the thing, Justin, and I've asked over and over again, asked for questions and there's not been any answers. And no, that is not a critique and that is not a response to you. I'm just talking in general. That how many firearms were really at the party? Because all we've ever really heard from what Caden had said, that there was a 12-gauge shotgun which belonged to Isaac Rojas, which we saw in the footage at 1:05 in the morning outside by Caden's point of view next to Brylan slapping Noah. But you had Brylan Sweat with a hunting rifle and Jack Newton with an AR, I think AR-15, and it had a thermal scope. 3 firearms. Is that it? How many firearms were at the party? Because only 3 firearms have been acknowledged, and that's it. Sounds pretty underwhelming, to be honest. Now, Justin says, but you, Ref, clearly don't understand context. Oh no, Justin. You're in no position to be talking about context when you literally take it out of context what I said originally in response to your first comment made, and you jumped in saying, I never said Noah was shot, I never said this, I never said that. Neither did I, Justin, neither did I accuse you of that, but you're interpreting that when I'm talking You know, in terms of my mind, when I'm talking in general, or if I'm talking in third person, you always seem to bring it back to yourself and make it seem like I'm calling you this, I'm saying you said that, you, me. Almost like Jan Fiorillo entitlement. All about you. How unusual. Justin says, we all know Caden Pressey was interviewed 2 times now. Yes, we do, Justin. But you worded it as in the same sentence that your nephews that have never been interviewed, you mentioned Caden's name too, and then after that you added a full stop, a period. So with it being all in the same sentence, when reading it out, more so from a stranger's point of view, they will read it as, my nephews have not been interviewed, neither has Caden Pressey. That's how it was worded by you, Justin. It's a small-scale thing, and you still can't even admit to that. That is embarrassing. But don't worry, Justin. Despite your mess-ups, I can still understand you. But we are going round in circles, are we not? It's a revolving door. But don't worry. I deal with humans like this for many times over the years. So it will be okay. What else do we have? Justin says, my nephews are a time. Did I make it clear for you? Yes, you did, Justin. Well done. Maybe if you do that more often, you wouldn't find yourself in sticky situations as much. See, it goes a long way. It's not that difficult. Just make it clear with your language and wording, and if you did that from day one, you would have been better off. Justin says, I'm sorry you don't understand common sense. So where's your proof and evidence in terms of the common sense aspect? See, I've already clearly highlighted that how I was reading and interpreting your comments was from the perspective of if you had an up-and-coming, impressionable, first-time viewer learning about the case, they read your poorly worded, piss-poor response, terrible sentence structuring, they would misunderstand it and get the wrong end of the stick. But you, Justin, because of your poor wording, would lead to misinformation, because at times you jump the gun, it leads to misinformation, it leads to confusion, and it has a knock-on effect with other people that may be vulnerable, that may not quite clearly think all the time, and just nod their heads. So I was putting myself into the shoes of someone seeing it for the first time, and then I was bringing it back to reality, as in what Justin said, he didn't mean it quite that way, but he messed up. What he meant to say was this. And finally now, Justin, you've corrected your mistake, but now you're jumping in saying, but I'm lacking common sense. Is that so? I think common sense would say that whatever I have done over all these years and the coverage that I've done and the amount of times I've been attacked and threatened just by doing what I do and using reasoning ability and perspective and standardized thinking, like it's triggered humans with time. That common sense seems to trigger people. And I've clearly triggered people, but I'm still here and other people are not. Level of common sense can lead to a level of, longevity still present. So there must be a form of common sense, Justin. Once again, in terms of the common sense aspect, Justin lacking context, Roy, I don't think you're in a position to be talking too much. Besides that, you say everyone on this page knows exactly what I meant. Well, except for you, lol. On this page, this particular page right here, or do you mean the previous page or the previous video you actually commented on? Because where you messed up, Justin, was not on this so-called page. It was on a previous page, a previous video. So you can't even get that right, Justin. Great job there with the common sense. Moving on. Also, can you research and find out what all partygoers have gotten lawyers now? Might be a good video. The real mess is showing screenshots out of context. Yes, it can be rather disappointing, can't it, Justin? And we've seen that clearly in the past on the army page. Do we have anything else? Joyce Bergow says to Justin, do you ever sleep at all? Up till 1 or 2 in the morning, sometimes later. That dove hunt did not end Noah's life. Man, the obsession with it is crazy. You sit here and tell Wrath he basically has no common sense. But you have no common sense when it comes to that. Want to talk about showing screenshots out of context? You did that with Jax. It doesn't matter who got lawyers. My response was, still you fail to understand, Justin. Huge facepalm. Justin responds back to Joyce saying, are you serious? I never shared Jax out of context. You are a liar, Joyce. Jack and mine conversations were shared in the first Noah group with Donna Bond and 6 other people. Donna and another person shared those screenshots from that group, not me. So if somebody else shared them and you're passing, not the blame, but you're shifting the focus onto other people, I've seen a pattern with that by Justin. Oh, it wasn't me. No, it's actually somebody else. It's someone else. It's always somebody else but you, Justin. But during the occasions when it is somebody else, like you say, Justin, and if someone else did share the screenshots and they were lacking context, but you were aware at some point, did you not set the record straight and say, well, here's the full context, or did you just go along with it? Kind of like sitting on the fence on the sideline. Oh, it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault, but, I kind of just sit on the fence and go along with it for the sake of it anyway. That's how it sounds like. And Justin says, for some reason, that dove hunt bothers some people, and why didn't they post pictures of it? But Justin, you said the whole of September. How many dove hunts took place in September that month? Was it just one? Was it multiple? If it's multiple, well, none were documented. So is it as special? Is it as suspicious? Wouldn't it be more suspicious if there was multiple dove hunts through September, but that one particular day or two, which coincided with the party time one, that wasn't documented? That would be weird. But what's the deal with the dove hunt? How many were there, first of all? Justin, you're jumping the gun from the looks of it. Justin also says, we all heard the rumours of older men at that social hosting party Friday and Saturday. Older men? Of what age, though? Could Noah have gotten into it with them? What, on a Friday and Saturday? Noah died Monday, so why are we focusing on who was there Friday and Saturday? More so we need to focus on if they returned Sunday, Monday, and it's just not being acknowledged here by Justin. Weird. And why are you covering for them? Oh, great. Shouldn't every scenario be covered? Oh, no, Justin. Has that dog food gone upside down? Justin Roy, did you seriously say, shouldn't every scenario be covered? Oh, for that full perspective and that full balanced. Well, based off your mindset, Justin Roy, the moment that I covered all different scenarios and outcomes is the moment you accused me of being biased and one-sided and unbalanced because I was looking at it from a holistic point, because I was acknowledging it from the dark side. You hypocritical, incompetent human. What a hypocritical, disease-ridden mindset to have to say what you've just said when you've labelled me the way you have previously. How dare you? Cretin-like behaviour, that. And that is simply an observation. Moving on. What else do we have here? Oh wait, you're from there and that area, still covering for your friends. See, makes sense. So Justin is accusing Joyce Bergow for covering up and being a part of the case. Oh, great. And it does matter who all got lawyers now. You've never been here for Noah, Joyce. You are clearly here for the drama and cover-up crew. Ridiculous. So supposedly Joyce Bergow, that has gathered screenshots over time to provide perspective. Joyce Bergow has been the catalyst at times in getting responses from different people and acknowledgements to figure out what's what and what's going on, to either support or counter Caden Pressey in valid ways. That, oh, that's considered as a bad thing? Really? How weird. Joyce Bergow responds, are you an idiot? I've never seen any other share except you. Are you an idiot? What the hell would I be covering up? I know as much as you do, you idiot. If I actually knew, I'd turn it in. Justin's response, no, I don't fail to understand. You don't understand context. I think, who's this in response to though? Because it just says at what exactly? No, I don't fail to understand. Well, I said you fail to understand, and Justin says, no, I don't. So maybe he's responding to me here. I said, YouTube's user face layout isn't quite clear, to be fair. So Justin says, I don't fail to understand. You, WarLike Wrath, don't understand context. Don't understand context said by someone or someone that knows of people that would share stuff out of context, expecting people to know the full context of it when all the pieces of the puzzle aren't present. Yeah, how useless is that mindset? Justin says, you literally tried to humiliate me because of wording. It's not humiliating, Justin. The only reason why you interpret it as humiliating because you know you've messed up, you've effed up previously, and because someone is publicly highlighting it, you're embarrassed by your mishaps. And you're trying to twist it. Yeah, that's a nice little line that you like to use. Twist it to make it seem much worse, to make it seem like one is the big bad wolf, and you're the little Red Riding Hood with your little basket of cookies or whatever you've got in there. If you use poor language and wording, and as we've seen in the past on the army page, it can lead to misunderstandings and, a mess. I wasn't around in the early days, Justin, but I am more nowadays. So when I do see misunderstandings or bad wording sentences where it could be misunderstood by other people, I will clear it up and I will make it public as to what one was actually meaning or what one got wrong. And if you take that as humiliation just by someone correcting your wording, well then, what happens when something actually bad does happen? How do you interpret it as that then? What else? I mean, Justin, are you going to interpret it the next time that someone tickles you with a feather duster? You're going to call that sexual harassment, rape, and assault terroristic threats of a feather duster being tickled upon your nose? Because based off your mentality, that's exactly the way it's going. Besides that, you say, when everyone that's followed this case for any amount of time knows Caden has been interviewed. I know, Justin. I acknowledged it. But how I was reacting to how you worded it as, originally, in your sentence, that Caden and your nephews have not been interviewed. And I said to you, Justin, why are you saying that? You know, Justin, that Caden has been interviewed. Right? And now you're throwing it towards me as in, I didn't know, but other people do. Justin, I think there is something going wrong, glitching in the matrix within your mind. But don't worry, Dr. Wrath is here to fix it if you require it. Moving on. My point was, OHP didn't want to interview him as Caden had to go to get them both times. Yes, I acknowledge that as well, Justin. So what's the problem? Just like OHP clearly doesn't want or need to interview my nephews. Yet you make a big deal like I said Caden wasn't interviewed, which is absolutely stupid to say. You do know, Justin, that I have proof and evidence of you messing it up in how you worded it at the time, and it's been documented on my channel previously, hence why we're here now and hence why I'm talking about it. Do your research, Justin, like a good little boy, and then maybe you will learn a thing or two. I knew what you were getting at, but how I was wording it, how it was literally worded, you were saying something completely different at the time. Ever since, you have changed it, but you will not admit it. And that's such a small scale thing as well. So what else will you not admit then with time or in life? It's not a good look, Justin. And I'm sure there's many other witnesses about that would agree and maybe add on even further. And the difference is, Justin, once again, okay, we're talking about Caden and nephews. What's the difference? Well, the similarities supposedly are police didn't want anything to do with either of them. But you know what the difference is, Justin? Broken record Roy, is Caden did go after police to get interviews done, to get it out of the way, to assist and to help. You're saying that your nephews have not been interviewed, never been interviewed, and that police want nothing to do with them? Oh, so that's good enough, just leave it as it is. Well, if you think highly of Caden Pressey, or you think it was needed for Caden to be interviewed by police and you personally reached out and interfered yourself, then why not do the same with your nephews then? If it was so important for Caden to be interviewed, and for Caden himself to go out of his way to get the interviews, even if the police didn't want to, then why don't your nephews do the same thing then? Why is it one rule for one rule for another? Justin? You're in no position to be talking. You've messed up once again with how you word it. And then you say, and the dove hunt obviously is a big deal, as they didn't even want to post pictures of it like they did every single year before September. How many events take place in September? Is it a one-time thing or multiple? As said, hopefully you heard my previous point. It puts more adults near or the social hosting party. But again, everything points to that party, house and property in my opinion. Several know exactly what happened to Noah. Simply making clear, important, valid observations. Big face palm. Justin says, failed attempt at humiliation. Several people inboxed me and was asking what you were even trying to say. We all know Ken Pressey was interviewed. It was literally leaked by George. Several people inboxed you and was asking what you, as in me, was trying to say. Well, whoever those several people that were inboxing you are clearly just as incompetent as you are, because you couldn't even understand that the way I was talking and the position I was putting myself in. See, the reality is, Justin, we're going to go round in a never-ending cycle because you, Justin, when it comes to language and vocabulary, you're just not on my level. Okay, there is a language barrier. The same happened with a previous viewer on my channel who was from Poland that had the cheek to say WarLike Wrath called me a cretin, and I never associated their name or username with the word cretin. I used the word in general, but they misunderstood. Language barrier literally because they're from Poland, or just a language barrier more so because they're just not using the same vocabulary, sentence structuring as I do. It is what it is, Justin. And like with many other humans that may misunderstand me, there's only so much I can do for them. And by that point, they become a lost cause. And you, Justin, are on very thin ice on being a lost cause. Okay? Do you want that, Justin? Do you want to be a lost cause? I guess time will tell. Moving on. I got several inbox messages of why are you trying to humiliate me when again everyone knows Caden was interviewed. The thing is, Justin, I know Caden was interviewed, but you worded it as Caden was not, and there is proof and evidence of that on my previous videos. You seem to forget about that like a goldfish. George C. literally leaked Caden Press's interview because Alicia trusted him. Okay. Every single person in the live chat right now, every single competent person with common sense and a decent IQ watching my video right now, this live premiere, anyone, everyone in the live chat and watching in the background, comment right now with an emoji, with a yes or no, and let me know, do you remember that video I did a few days ago where Justin clearly highlighted he used Caden's name in the same sentence as his nephews by stating neither have been interviewed by police, never. And I reacted to it and said, Justin, you know Caden was interviewed, why are you wording it like that? And now Justin is twisting it as in, Raph, why are you wording it like that? But I wasn't. You started it, Justin. So anyone in the chat, if you witnessed it, if you remember it with the evidence which I've covered in my previous videos, let me know in the live chat now. Besides that, George says, we all know Alicia shared it with you. Well, OHP's been aware since the day it went public. Alicia also trusted Jamie Cooney, someone she's never met in her life. Same with you. She never met you either, and Caden's never met you either. Enjoy your shit show. Y'all created it. And Michelle, face palm as well, and me as well, another face palm. There's a lot of face palms going about that. I'm probably not going to have much of a face left. Besides Justin Roy's bombastic behaviour and attitude issues, we put that aside quite easily. I do find it weird how I couldn't quite find the specific article where it covered it from Jimmy Williams' perspective with the time associated as when he arrived. It is documented on my channel somewhere, but when looking at it online, there was like duplicate People articles and then News Nation repeating the same stuff. I don't know why it didn't show up. It mentioned Jimmy Williams a little bit, but more so Jeremiah Wilson. But there was a focus on Jimmy Williams, which I just couldn't find today. But we looked at it from another perspective, so that's still good. I'll just slight little correction in the intro, what I'll do just for a disclaimer or so apologies about that. Maybe if necessary, I can always go back to the previous one, but just as a highlight, I do remember an article of Jimmy Williams who got there first at 6:15 or so, or 6:18 around, and said that he saw Noah on his side, arms kind of folded in, legs straight. Caden Pressey said Noah was on his side, so similarities there. but arms and legs were sprawled out earlier. So it's gone from arms, legs sprawled out to not sprawled out. Some saying fetal position, others saying not. Why is it that difficult? You find a body on the ground. What position are they in? It's not that difficult. But based off how this case has gone, and even with that side-by-side rollover as to who were the passengers and the identities, that's been made into a great difficulty. In regard to Caden Pressey and the timeline situation, if he's truly, truly innocent, then there's no need to make any adjustments or add any additional stuff on. But Alicia Lee has, from those text conversations, what we've seen of the discrepancies with time. Why is there a need to alter or change or adapt or twist or turn or exaggerate or underplay anything when Caden is simply innocent? Keep it as it is. Keep it raw. Keep it true to yourself. Shouldn't be that difficult. But this case has been made difficult in many different ways, even in the simple times. If the simple moments can be so complex, then the more difficult things can be even more complex and a disaster. Not looking good. But besides that, I just wanted to do a recap today, because at least from the article, what we read today, it was kind of implied or interpreted to be like written as in there must be some kind of murder situation and there must be some kind of foul play, based off the language, the emotive language used. But then you had that expert that simply said, due to certain injuries and how that can happen, quick death doesn't lead to much bleeding. If it doesn't lead to much bleeding, hence why there wasn't much blood about nearby. Okay, that's what you need, a little bit more of that. As for Jeremiah Wilson, what he may believe it to be, he only got limited knowledge with the position he's in. Okay, so not what I'm saying, but maybe what that pathologist said in an article could probably link to what some people in the comments have been saying. Okay, but we'll leave it there for now. Hopefully you found the video a little bit interesting. Maybe going over certain points again might stand out to you, and for some people may have never seen the articles before. They are available online, but they just don't get acknowledged enough, I guess. So if you want to hit the thumbs up, share the video, much appreciated. I'll see you next time. My name is WarLike Wrath. Goodbye for now.